sitting inside the cockpit. Heart rates rise, focus is maximum. Every driver, every team are thrilled to be back in the United States, and it's great to have F1 back in America. Great start from Vettel. Look at the pressure from With Circuit of the Americas, the 3.4-mile circuit being the centerpiece. It is quite the sight, and on global standards, this is one of the best venues in the world. The drivers, the teams simply love this place.
What a cool place, huh? What a great place to have a conference. We want to thank them for allowing us to be here today. And I know a lot of y'all took advantage of the tours, and it sounded like it was pretty awesome. Now, I'm not one for heights, but I heard you can go up in the tower, and it's glass on the bottom and look down. That wouldn't have worked well for me today, but that's great. So along with it, but we certainly want to say that we're very impressed with this, and certainly as a gem of Austin, a gem of Texas, and I think a gem of the nation. So very cool. We're gathering where the world's most focused drivers compete to do something about the growing number of unfocused drivers in Texas. Distracted driving in our state is an epidemic, and unfocused drivers are a serious safety threat to all of us. Last year alone, there were 95,000 distracted driving collisions in Texas, nearly 20,000 serious injuries, and more than 500 deaths. With millions of drivers using cell phones in their vehicles to talk and text, our roadways are getting more dangerous to them and more dangerous to everyone else on the road too. We have to do something to improve this situation. We chose this beautiful facility for our second Distracted Driving Summit for a reason. We want people across Texas to understand that driving safely is a very serious matter, and it takes paying complete attention when you're behind the wheel to do things right. No place illustrates that better than the Circuit of Americas, where driving safely is the only way to cross the finish line. It's going to take every one of us to turn back the problem of distracted driving. So we're especially grateful for people like Zach Veach. Take a look at how a professional driver sees the situation.
The son of a national truck and tractor pulling champion, Zach Veach started racing karts at age 12. Plans to advance to cars 3 years later were foiled when both the Formula BMW and Atlantics championships were canceled. A call from Andretti Autosport offering a seat in IndyCar's new USF 2000 series saved the day, however. 2 seasons there and another in the Star Mazda series launched Veach up the Mazda Road to Indy ladder and into Indy Lights for 2013.
If it wasn't for it, I couldn't be where I am today. Starting my 4th season later with Andretti Autosport, I find myself in Lights and hopefully be spending a couple years here and then maybe even making a debut in IndyCar. The biggest thing is just going to be, the race distances. With them being 100-mile races, we're talking about being in the car for an hour at a time, and that's going to make it really tough to be able to keep your mental concentration up throughout the whole thing, as well as your physical strength and conditioning.
And to keep up with his schedule, Zach relies on that mental and physical fitness off track as well. He is an author of a book for teens, an app creator, a Racer magazine columnist, and a spokesman for anti-bullying and anti-distracted driving campaigns, along with Got Milk and his K-12 online education program, where he is currently finishing his senior year of high school. All of this and social media too.
It's all about trying to get our message out there as much as we can through social media like Facebook and Twitter, and that's what at the end of the day we're here for. Yeah, we get to drive the race cars on the track, but I love interacting with the people.
And if all of that isn't enough, Zach still finds time to just be a teenager.
I like to have a lot of hobbies. I'm always racing RC cars when I'm at home, going to the gym, and spending a lot of time with friends too. I'm still a typical teenager, and I have still some teenager habits. I'm a messy kid at home. I have to work on cleaning my room up a little bit, but racing's been my dream, and I hope to be here for many years to come.
Since this video was shot a year ago, Zach Veach, who is only 19 years old, I think could be one of my kids, has continued to squeeze into a single day more than most of us think possible. He's the #1 Indy Lights driver on the Andretti Autosports team and has already won 2 races, captured back-to-back pole positions, and has had 5 podium finishes. He's a rising IndyCar star, and I think you could say he's who to beat in 2014. I'd like to welcome an advocate against distracted driving, Zach Veach, on up.
First off, I'd like to say thank you, Carol, and thank you, TxDOT. It's an honor to be here today at the Circuit of the Americas and to support TxDOT's campaign and help bring awareness to the dangers of distracted driving and to advocate to keep our roads safe. I have never had the honor of driving here, so I'm a little anxious. I was trying to steal a Porsche earlier, but they caught me. So maybe after this we can all do some hot laps, but all successful drivers drive with no distractions. It doesn't matter if you're a race car driver doing 200 miles per hour down the racetrack or a commuter going 60 miles an hour down the highway. Driving takes concentration, safety, and focus. All it takes is a split second to wreck your car, and any distraction at any speed can be dangerous. For me, I'm here, unfortunately, like so many others are, and I got involved with this in a certain way. A lot of us, we don't understand how dangerous texting while driving is until it's right in our face and there is an accident. I know growing up as a teenager, by the time I started driving a car, I already had a cell phone in my hands for 3 years. So when I was just 15 years old, I come from a very small town, a small farm town in Ohio, and a young girl from my community had her license for a couple of months, and unfortunately she was texting while driving, and that led to a fatal accident for us. So when you come from a town of about 200 people, something like that really affects all of us in a tragic way. And just being 15 years old and my career just starting when I got the call with Andretti, I knew that I wanted to do something to help move us all forward in that aspect. I didn't know what, but I tried to reach out, and I learned right away that from an education standpoint, so many great organizations like TxDOT here is really setting the bar very high for us. I thought that if technology created this problem, maybe technology could end it. So I created a phone application for Droid, and I'm actually just a couple of months away from releasing it for the iOS devices that automatically replies to messages you get while you're driving. Because the thing is, at the racetrack, when I'm so focused in the zone that when my engineer comes on the radio, he takes me out of my world and it disrupts me. Your mind, everybody thinks that we can multitask very well. But really, your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. It's just really efficient switching back and forth from those things. So when you're behind the wheel of the car, it's not just your life in your hands, but it's everybody else that's around you. So I know there's going to be a lot of great topics for you guys all to hear and take away with, but the thing is, if employers can, teach their employees have a policy about distracted driving, not only is that going to help them and help you, they're going to take that home to their families as well. Because it looks like there's probably a lot of parents here, and your kids might just be around my age or even younger. You don't want us to be texting while driving. We all want an opportunity to chase our dreams, and we all deserve our own trip across the finish line, whether that's at the Indianapolis 500 after a hot day in May or anything else. So I just want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for listening to me. And let's just all put distractions aside, and when we're behind the wheel, and concentrate on the road. And make it safe for all of us and for everyone else to come. So I'd like to thank you for having me here today. If I can do anything else or if there's questions later on the day, feel free to contact me. And, of course, thank you again for having me.
I know he's a race car driver, but you still can fall off the stage, so be careful. Thanks so much, Zach, and thank you for being our advocate for distracted driving. We have a very full program today, and I wanted to just take a few minutes to go over what we have planned. This morning, we'll hear from my boss and my friend, TxDOT's Deputy Executive Director, who will give you an idea of the problems that we face in Texas when it comes to distracted driving. David Teeter from the National Safety Council will update us on the latest research that documents the dangers of distracted driving and why it is so dangerous when drivers attempt to multitask. We'll hear from Todd Clement, who is a national expert on the liability that businesses face when their employees are using cell phones on the job. Before we break for lunch, which will be around 12:15, we'll hear from the University of Texas professors Art Markman and Bob Duke, who have some thoughts on why people can't seem to stay off their phones, even when they know it's dangerous to use their cell phones when they're driving. And then later this afternoon, we'll hear from 3 businesses based in Texas who've adopted company policies that prohibit or restrict their employees' use of cell phones when they're on the job. And you'll have a chance to ask questions about what they did and how they did it. I just want to point out the little cards that they gave you whenever you checked in has a USB in there, and it has some policies and some of the information from the conference so that you can take it home with you along when you go back to the office and back to work. And finally, to wrap up today's summit, we'll hear from those who have experienced the pain and the loss that come with a fatal distracted driving crash, and we'll adjourn about 3:30. We know you're busy, and we hope you'll find the summit a valuable investment of your time. We'll be having a drawing around 3:15 for an Apple iPad, generously donated by the technology company Aegis Mobility, but you have to be present to win, so we want y'all to all stay to the very end. During our breaks today, we invite you to check out the distracted driving simulator and the F1 race car game in the lobby and visit the exhibitors. Restrooms are down the hall, past room B, and there's coffee, tea, and sodas in the back of the room for y'all. It's now my pleasure to introduce TxDOT's Deputy Executive Director, John Barton. Mr. Barton joined TxDOT in 1986 and is now responsible for executive oversight of all TxDOT operations. He oversees the management of the state's transportation system, which includes the largest public roadway system in the country. His mission is to ensure that our roadways are built and maintained in a safe and efficient manner. The issue of distracted driving is a personal one for John. Texas couldn't ask for a better or more passionate safety advocate. Here's John to look at the problem in our state of Texas. Thank you, John.
Howdy. Can everybody hear me? Way back to back, howdy? All right, good. Well, thank you all for being here today. What an honor it is for me to spend this morning with you, and I appreciate you taking time to come out and be a part of this summit. Before I share a few words with you, Zach, I don't know if you've got a special young lady in your life or not, but I've got a daughter that I'd like to introduce you to. I'll give you my card before you leave today. Isn't he an amazing young man? Let's give Zach another hand for being here today. You know, I really am excited for all of you to be here today, and I wanted to share with you a few things that I wish for. The first is I wish that none of you were here today. I really do. Because that would mean that we weren't having to talk about these types of things. I wish we didn't have to have summits about distracted driving. And I wish that more of us, more Texans, would pay attention to the task at hand the way Zach described it when they're driving an automobile. Because we know that the consequences of those distractions can be very damaging and cause tremendous loss. If more of us did pay attention to the issues around us, we wouldn't have to have summits like this. If more of us paid attention, then there wouldn't be parents somewhere here in the state of Texas today burying their child that was lost in a horrible automobile accident. There would be children that would be greeting their loved ones, their parents or their grandparents, their friends as they came to their home this afternoon, rather than having a visit from our law enforcement officers with police departments or the Department of Public Safety coming to their home to share with them the most terrible news that anybody can possibly receive. And let me tell you, we've got a lot of men and women in here that serve us in our communities in law enforcement, and I've been with them one time only, when we had to tell a mother that, of two beautiful daughters that her husband and their father had been killed and would not be coming home. And that's an event that none of you, I'm sure, would ever want to have to do. Employees would be sitting around the break rooms talking about the big game. San Antonio Spurs? Rather than talking about their coworker or a family member or friend who had lost their lives. And I wish it weren't true that during the time we're here today, statistically speaking, at least one person will be killed in an automobile-related accident because the driver of that automobile was distracted. So those are the things that I would wish for. 1 in 5. 1 in 5. That's how many crashes are caused by distracted drivers. And the number of drivers that are out there driving distracted is greater than that. And by distractions, we're talking about all things. We're talking about putting away those cell phones and not being distracted by them. We're talking about adjusting our radios, combing our hair, putting on makeup, being distracted by somebody else in the vehicle with us. And I've shared this on several occasions. I want to continue to honor my commitment to all of you. I promise, as your chief engineer, the deputy executive director of this great state organization here in Texas, that I want to lead by example. And I'm going to ask all of you to follow in making a similar promise. I promise to you that from this day forward, for as long as I'm blessed to live on this earth, I will never, ever, ever operate an automobile while putting on makeup. So, just want to make sure that you understand distractions are real out there, and we need to put those things away. In all honesty, those distractions do add up to serious consequences. If you take your eye off the road, if you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, you may run into a parked vehicle or rear-end someone at a traffic light or a stop sign while you're adjusting the music on your iPhone or radio. Or perhaps hit a pedestrian while they're walking across the street in front of you because you've been distracted by something, or that they've been distracted as they're walking. What it all comes down to is that a distraction is anything that takes our attention off of operating that automobile safely, just like Zach talked about as he was driving those vehicles that he is blessed to race in. And it's happening far too often. Some form of distraction is leading to more than 20% of all the crashes that we experience here in the state of Texas. And those numbers are up by 4% from the years in the past. So our challenge is growing, and it's something that this summit is intended to help us focus on. Besides the growing volume of crashes, the concern that we have with the distracted crashes is that they're extremely serious and often deadly. And you can see the numbers on the screen here. Someone is likely to be killed in a crash while we're here today. I already talked to you about that. And it's because either the driver or the person that they hit was distracted by talking on a phone or texting or something else going on around them. On average, at least one person a day, 365 days a year, dies in an automobile-related accident because of a distracted driver behind the wheel. 505 alone last year. And we know that driving under the influence of alcohol and failure to control speed are a couple of problems for us, but distracted driving is starting to grow as well. As you can see on the screen here, it's a growing and alarming statistic and trend that is causing problems for us all across this great state of Texas. And it's something that this summit and the work that you and others are going to be doing can help us address. We also know that distracted driving happens to be problematic with young drivers. Zach talked about that. Often they've had that phone in their hand long before they've had the license to operate an automobile. But what's surprising is people that are 45 years and older are starting to be statistically significant in this distracted driving arena as well. And that's people like you and me, for many of us in this room. And that's a statistic that we need to focus on and understand so we can make sure we're doing everything we can to resolve this issue and solve this problem, no matter who the drivers are. And we know this as well, that at the very time of the day when most of us are leaving work to go home, or perhaps going to an after-school event, or meet friends and family for those things that we enjoy most in life, that's the very time of the day when distracted driving is causing the most significant challenge for us. It's when we have the highest number of accidents associated with distracted driving in that evening rush hour commute time, if you will. But it's not just a problem that faces us in terms of the human loss. That's certainly a huge issue for us, but it's also taking a significant economic toll on the great state of Texas and the nation as a whole. Statistics tell us that traffic crashes associated with distracted driving are costing Texas employers, many of you in this room and your colleagues in other businesses across this state, about $4.3 billion every single year. And our federal partners have done an analysis, and they tell us that one on-the-job crash that's associated with distracted driving can cost about $16,000 per crash to that employer, about $76,000 for every injury that's caused, and about $505,000 for every fatality associated with those crashes. So it's certainly a huge financial burden. Statewide, the cost to Texans just from distracted driving crashes alone was close to $4 billion last year when the numbers were tallied. That includes things like lost production when you're away from work, the expenses that you incur for sick leave and hospital and doctor's bills, and the insurance costs that you have associated with those activities and those injuries. So it's a big financial burden. And I tell you, if I could get my share of that $3.8 billion rather than being injured, I would certainly take that, because that's a huge financial windfall for each of us individually. It's going to take a lot of different approaches to address this issue. There is no one silver bullet that we can use to take care of this problem. We know that some people respond to these things by hearing about the dangers of distracted driving, like you're going to during this summit today. Others stop it only when they know it's in their best interest. They've heard the dangers associated with it. They know that it's too risky. Perhaps they're afraid of getting a ticket. With all due respect to our law enforcement officers, the first thing most of us do when we see one of them out there in black and white is pay attention, and we're getting a little frightened. And so we're afraid of getting ticketed for behaving inappropriately or driving in the wrong ways. And for others, maybe they're motivated because they are afraid that breaking a rule is just the wrong thing to do. So it's going to take a lot of different approaches to address this challenge that we're facing. We've learned in the past through our drunk driving campaigns and our seatbelt use campaigns that the fear of getting a ticket motivates some people, and they've changed their behavior today. That's a great thing. They want to obey the law. And law enforcement officers all around our state are doing a great job of patrolling and writing tickets where it's illegal for cell phone use. Right now, we know that you can't use a cell phone when you're in a school zone. We know that if you're 18 years of age or younger, you can't use the cell phone at any time when you're operating an automobile. And more of our communities are putting in place ordinances that make the use of cell phones, texting and operating a vehicle at the same time against city ordinances. And so those things are helpful, but there has to be more. TxDOT has started campaigns about this and have been doing it since 2011. And right now we're in the middle of our annual Talk, Text, and Crash campaign. Many of you may have heard about it. Several of us wear these bracelets every day to remind us to talk about it and to have people ask us about it so we can share that message with them. And as Zach pointed out, it's a campaign to remind everybody that we can't multitask, regardless of what we think, and we have to pay attention to the task in front of us when we're operating an automobile. And we want our drivers to understand these challenges. We want them to believe that using their cell phones while they're driving is just the wrong thing to do, and that it has a lot of serious consequences to it. When you came in this morning, you probably noticed that big cell phone out there, that crashed cell phone. A great visual image that we can use and that our media campaign advisors has developed with our team to travel around the state of Texas to share the message. Starting tomorrow, it's going to be in Fort Worth, and then it's going to travel later this month to other cities all across this state. We're going to be displaying that cell phone to tell the message about the dangers of distracted driving and to remind all of us to put down our cell phones and concentrate on the task at hand while we're driving. We're also placing those messages out there on the radio, television spots, newspapers, billboards to warn motorists and drivers that talking and texting while you're operating a vehicle can result in a crash. And this is an exciting campaign for us, and we hope that you and others will continue to hear more about it in the days ahead. At TxDOT, we know that we're not going to be able to stop this alone, and so we appreciate your partnership and people like Zach coming forward to tell their stories. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about how businesses can understand these challenges and perhaps incorporate behaviors within their own organizations to curb this behavior. More and more, we find that companies and organizations are adopting policies that make it against company protocol and policy to operate a vehicle while you're talking or texting. We've also realized that in doing that, we can help you understand the value of those policies. At TxDOT, we've created and have in place a policy that doesn't allow any of us in a TxDOT vehicle to operate that vehicle while we're talking or texting on a cell phone. And if your company doesn't have one, we're going to encourage you to look at seriously adopting a policy today as you leave this summit and you understand the dangers and the cost and the consequences of operating a vehicle while using a cell phone. So it's up to all of us. It's up to you. Again, I wish that distracted driving was a problem we could solve through engineering, but it isn't. And while we can engineer a safe driving environment for all of the motorists on our Texas roadways, all we can do beyond that is to encourage people to drive safely while they're out on those roadways. We have to do our job to make sure that we're convincing drivers that it's just not enough to drive while you're partially paying attention, but you have to put your full focus, your full attention on that task that's most important when you're operating a vehicle. It's like getting them to buckle up when they're in their vehicles, which we've done good. It's like convincing them not to drink and drive while they're operating a vehicle, which we've been successful at. And it's important that we try as hard as we can to convince people to not operate a vehicle while they're distracted, because their lives and the lives of all those that are on the roadway around them are dependent upon it. I'm excited to see so many different organizations out here, other state agencies and business and safety specialists focused on this challenging issue for all of us. And it's encouraging to work alongside you as a partner in this to get this message out across the state. And the message is pretty simple. It means that by doing that, we're not using our cell phones when we're operating a vehicle. We're always watching where we're going and behaving in a way that is appropriate, that we're aware of the others that are on the roadway around us, and that we're obeying all traffic laws. And I would ask that as we gather here today, we let this summit be a catalyst to spread this message all across Texas like a wildfire, so that people like that young lady in Zach's hometown won't be distracted while they're operating a vehicle, won't kill themselves or someone else, and that every street and highway in Texas is safer for all of us and for those that mean the most to us. We can do this by working together. I appreciate you so much for being out here today. I appreciate your focus on this very serious and growing challenge for all of us. And at the end of the day, it's making sure that we do what we can as professionals in this space to protect those people that we're given the honor, opportunity, and blessing to serve. And that's the 26 million people who call Texas home and those that come to visit us in this great state of Texas. So thank you for allowing me to be here this morning and share a few words with you. I hope that this summit is a great event for you and that you get a lot out of it. I appreciate what you do in the safety environment, and may God bless all of you in the great state of Texas.